I'm holding a small, pale yellow coin from long ago 4th century, edges slightly worn. Now let me tell you something important. If you place this coin next to another one struck 700 years later, both come out the same weight, the same purity. 7 centuries, and nothing changed. Now think about the money in your own pocket. Can it buy the same things it could 10 years ago? That's exactly where the real question begins. How did this money, which deceived no one for so long, one day begin to melt away without anyone noticing? Because the most striking part of this collapse is this. It didn't arrive with the announcement of a great war or crisis. It began with a small, unnoticed change. I live in London, an independent economic historian who works with old money and old economies. And this, to me, is one of the most fascinating stories I've ever come across. The story begins in the 4th century, when Rome's currency was falling apart entirely. Silver coins still looked like silver, but inside, they were now pure copper. A thin silver layer had been plated over the copper. Carry it in your pocket for a while, and the true color underneath would show through. People could feel with their own hands that their money was losing value. It was in exactly this chaos that Emperor Constantine, in 312 AD, decided to mint a completely new gold coin. Its name was solidus, meaning solid, unshakable. The Byzantines would call it nomisma in their own language, simply meaning money. About 4.5 grams, nearly pure gold, around 24 carats by today's measure. A few years ago, I visited a small antique dealer in London. At one of the counters, the seller placed 2 nomismata in my hands, one from the time of Constantine, the other from 7 centuries later. "Weigh them both," he said, smiling. I did. They came out identical. In that moment, I realized this wasn't coincidence. It was a genuine system. Historians don't call this coin the dollar of the Middle Ages for nothing. Because this money wasn't just valid within Byzantine borders, it was accepted in nearly every corner of the known world. Today, seeing a dollar in someone's wallet doesn't surprise you, does it? 1,000 years ago, seeing this small gold coin gave traders the same sense of confidence. The Arabs called this coin Byzant, and rather than minting their own gold coins, they generally preferred to use it. To trust the currency of a rival empire that much, that's no small thing. Nomismata have been found in Russia, in Iran, even on an island as far away as Sri Lanka. How does such a small piece of gold travel so far? Imagine England's currency being accepted today, in China or Russia, at full value without question. The trust the nomisma commanded in its era came close to that. The answer is actually quite poetic. The most trusted guards of the Byzantine emperors were warriors from Scandinavia. Known in earlier times as Vikings, they were called the Varangian Guard. In a small museum in Stockholm, I had stood transfixed before a display case about these guards. They had taken their pay in nomismata and brought them back to Sweden. Some are still on display there. What's interesting is this: about a quarter of the coins found have holes in them, meaning people didn't just spend this gold, they wore it around their necks. Money was also a status symbol. So how did this coin remain uncorrupted for so long? Part of the answer lies in the tax system. Byzantium collected the bulk of its taxes directly in gold. That gold went back to the mint and was recoined like a closed loop. A local governor or general couldn't mint their own coins and break this cycle. There's also this: the emperor's face was on the coin. Debasing the money was the same as publicly declaring, "My power is weakening." No one would do that easily. Today, the banknote in your hand has no gold behind it, only the word of an institution, a central bank. The nomisma carried both the intrinsic value of the gold itself and the word of the empire. So this story isn't just the story of a coin. It's the story of what we actually mean when we say value. Does it rest on metal or on a promise? A nomisma made up a significant part of a Byzantine soldier's monthly pay, meaning this coin sat in the pocket of an ordinary soldier, trusted equally for 7 centuries. This is where things get interesting. At the start of the 11th century, Emperor Basil II was still minting coins at full purity, full weight, They were reaching the very end of 7 centuries. If it had stopped there, this video would be far more boring, wouldn't it? But history, at exactly the moment things looked most secure, was preparing something else. Because the crack didn't come, as you might expect, from a great war or catastrophe. In the 1030s, Emperor Michael lowered the gold content of the coin, just a little, just slightly. There was no announcement. No declaration saying, "Our money is worth less now." Simply, the newly minted coin contained a little less gold, that was all. This brings me to something in my own life. Last year, in my mother's drawer, I found old English banknotes set aside years ago as valuable. Today you can barely buy anything with those notes. But no one ever sent me a letter saying, "Your money lost value today." No one ever does. In Byzantium, it happened exactly the same way. 10 years later, when Emperor Constantine Monomachos came to the throne, the gold content had fallen from 24 carats to 21, another small step. On top of that, the shape of the coin changed, no longer flat, but slightly concave, like a bowl. The thing you held in your hand now felt a little different, even to the eye. Expenditure at the palace was growing, money flowing to religious buildings, to the inner circle, an ever-expanding class of nobles. The easiest way to close the deficit was to use a little less gold in each coin. The next emperor, Constantine Ducas, brought the ratio down to 18 carats. The one after him, Romanos Diogenes, to 16, meaning in 30 years, a third of the purity had simply melted away. But each step, in itself, seemed small. None of it felt like a great collapse. Just like today, we grow accustomed to 1% inflation, without noticing. Then came 1071, the Battle of Manzikert. Byzantium suffered a crushing defeat against the Seljuks and lost most of Anatolia, the very heart of its tax revenue. Everyone remembers this battle as the moment everything began. But the gold inside the coin had been silently melting away for 30 years before this battle. Consider this too, this coin, 7 centuries later, was struck by the same disease that had destroyed Rome's own currency. They had beaten the disease, but the immunity wasn't permanent. One evening, I had told this story to a friend who works in banking. He put down his coffee halfway through and said, "So the trust breaks first, then the crisis explodes, is that it?" Exactly that. A crisis is usually a consequence, not a cause. The cause is hidden much earlier, in small decisions that no one ever puts on the front page. The Byzantine government did realize this at some point, and around the 1090s, issued a completely new gold coin called the hyperpyron, meaning highly refined. In a sense, it resembled today's renamings like new lira or new peso. They were trying to reclaim old trust under a new name. For a while, it even worked. But over time, the hyperpyron began to experience its own version of the same erosion. History was repeating itself, with a slight delay. In the 12th century, thanks to the hyperpyron, the empire genuinely caught its breath. The economy grew. Armies regained their strength. The palace seemed to be reclaiming its former splendor. Those living through it may even have thought the worst had passed. But this didn't change the end of the story, it only ensured the end came a little later. In 1204, the Crusaders sacked Constantinople, and the city remained under foreign rule for years. The treasury was emptied, trade collapsed, trust was shaken more deeply still. Even when the city was reclaimed in 1261, the old brilliance never returned. The Byzantines began to trust Venetian gold more than their own currency, even in their own homes. And here is the truly chilling final act of the story. In the year 1347, the last gold coin in Byzantine history was minted. Never again would a gold coin be struck. But the name hyperpyron continued to be used for more than 100 years after that, solely as a unit of account, on paper. Meaning money, even after its physical body had died, continued to wander through accounting ledgers like a ghost. When I first read this, I had to stop and think for a moment. So this story is not really about a metal that went unchanged for 7 centuries. It's about a trust that held unbroken for 7 centuries, and then broke. And that breaking didn't happen overnight. It came over decades, through decisions called small, that no one noticed, just as it could happen today. In history, stories like this have played out not once, but many times before Rome and after Byzantium. Perhaps the real question is whether this is an exception or the rule. From Rome to Byzantium, and from there to our own time, this pattern repeats in a strangely familiar way. The question is today, which stage do you think we're at? Perhaps this is why I love telling this story so much, because it's a story that never truly ends. Only the main characters and the settings change. I'd genuinely love to discuss this in the comments. What do you think today's Nomisma is? And how many more small decisions can it withstand?